Do you notice that your menstrual cycle affects your scientific work, your writing maybe? Well, if so, I'm going to share here a bit about how the menstrual cycle works and how you can plan your work as much as possible. Of course, it's not always everything in our hands, but as much as is in your hands around that cycle. So for those who don't know me, I'm Ana Pineda. I'm the founder of I Focus and Write, and is an online education company where I help scientists like you, other scientists maybe, and about how to create a more productive, a more creative, and also in the end a happier academic life. And because I truly believe this is possible. And well, we are now streaming in Instagram. Maybe you watch this in YouTube or listening to the private podcast that we have. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, yes, you can go to ifocusandwrite.com, and when you sign up there to the newsletter, you will receive information of how to listen in those other platforms. And today is also a very special day because tomorrow, 11th of February, we are at 2023, is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And well, this is a very important day, and I shouldn't say I wish there would be a moment when this shouldn't be celebrated, but it's needed and is now, and we should celebrate and give all that visibility that we can. And from all the things that I do in I Focus and Write, this topic of planning your work around the menstrual cycle is one of my favorite ones, and one that often causes surprise to people. Many people then send me messages or emails and tell me, whoa, I never thought about it, and I'm going to pay more attention, and I've started implementing some of these things, and now I see changes also about how I feel about my work, about my productivity, or the lack of productivity, or apparently productivity. Yeah? And it seems that indeed it's having a big effect. So I wanted to start with this. First, also, before we start explaining more about this cycle, I want to do a few disclaimers. So one is that I often associate both, so having a menstrual cycle with being a woman. And there was a moment when a very nice reader sent me an email and said, I really like the article. I have an article in the blog, but I have friends that are not women or do not identify as women and have a menstrual cycle. I said, oh yeah, completely right, and something that I didn't think about it. So even if you don't identify as a woman and you have a menstrual cycle, this is also something you can start paying attention to. Now, I also, like I said, this always generates some buzz, but I also got an email of a past colleague, and he's a group leader in Colombia, and he said, oh, well, it's not something that affects me directly, but I supervise women, and in my team there is people with menstrual cycles. So it's really interesting to know that these can indeed have such an effect on their work, and that we can help to give that freedom so you can plan your work more around it if it affects you. Because that's the other point. You might have a menstrual cycle and you might think it doesn't affect my work. That's possible too. Still, I would recommend you that you pay attention if you think it doesn't affect, and see if throughout the cycle there are certain days, either because of the menstruation or because of other factors, that you have more energy to do certain things and not to do others, and see if you can then find some patterns and try to adapt your work following that energy. And now, the last big disclaimer. Still, women, people with menstrual cycle, anyone actually, you can get anything that at any moment in your week, in your days. The thing is that some days it's going to cost you much more energy to get a thing done. And here with I Focus and Write, I'm a big fan of managing energy. Managing time is not enough. We also need to learn to manage our energy, to protect our energy, conserve it, so we also have energy to not work and enjoy life and all the things that you like to do. So if you also feel like you need to protect your energy, remember, start thinking about how cycles or any other things affect the energy you have to do certain tasks. Now, just please, because I see that today there are some people in the chat, Tell me in the chat if you feel that energy is affecting you, and if actually you already feel that the menstrual cycle is affecting your work. I would love to see it if you want to share. And now the next, those comments pop up. It's not immediately, it takes a few seconds. But in the meantime, also, I want to continue just explaining very briefly what is happening in your mind, in your body during your menstrual cycle. So depending on the sources, there are different phases, but I like to think on 4. So the menstrual phase, where you are actually with your period, then comes the follicular phase, where once the period is over, then comes the ovulation phase around the ovulation days, and then the luteal phase towards the end. And actually, let me check that I tend to confuse sometimes those two. And then the hormones levels also change through these phases. So especially the estrogen and progesterone levels keep changing. So for example, at the menstrual phase, those hormones are at the basal level. And then on the next phase, especially the estrogen starts picking up. And then it's a bit later that the progesterone also starts picking up. And it's during the luteal phase that is very, very interesting things happen. So towards the half of that phase, both are at their peak, but then both decline quite quickly. And you might have feel, for example, a few days before the period, I identify clearly because it's a moment when I want to start being aggressive, and sometimes I want to kill somebody, and I don't like to be around people. And the moment when that switches is the moment when those hormones do that big decline, at least for me. But this is very important that you pay attention and see how it affects you. It might be different. Let me see. Yes, the menstrual cycle effects. Totally, yeah. Okay, I'm happy it resonates. Yes, also job, energy. Because of pain, totally. So some people, and this is why I tell you, it's very important that you see for you how these hormonal changes and in these phases affect you on your energy when you want to do, because some people indeed have big pain already days before, and sometimes it only goes away when the menstruation completely finishes. Or people, it's not pain, it's more these mood changes, what you really see. For me, for example, I start really like 5 days before having these big mood changes, and big changes also in focus, in productivity, of course, but also focus. And after 2 days after the period, then they start going down. But it's important that you track yourself. So now, understanding these different phases, now the next thing is, what can we do? And I would especially now also hear how you can feel more towards doing certain tasks or others. Yes, absolutely. There is a big change in mood from one day to another, from being fine to being completely to being really down, to suddenly have this boost of energy and want to eat the world. It's truly amazing. So what to do? Well, so when planning the work, I like to think on the creativity productivity cycle. And this is a topic that we will talk in another occasion, because today is about how to match that cycle with the menstrual one. So that cycle also has 4 phases. So the first one is the void. And this I like more of a thinking phase, and it's a phase for reflection, and sometimes called a reflection phase. And for me, like I said, it starts 5 days before the period, but maybe for you starts a bit later. So that's the phase when you feel down in your mood, in your motivation. You maybe don't want to see people. I say it's a phase for inwards. You feel more like reading, listening to talks, maybe like being here today, not doing much, not putting much of your thoughts, of your work outwards. You don't feel like giving a presentation in front of 200 people in those days, but you maybe feel like staying in your office with a coffee, reading some papers and taking some notes. So what to do? So like I said, things like brainstorming, thinking, planning, reading, if you are following some sort of online course, following the lessons, maybe even going to some talks or seminars in your department, just being there, listening, absorbing all that information. Then, of course, if you can use those days and work from home, so you can take it a bit easier and have your naps and your breaks, or even take the day off, or several days off, well, that would be amazing. Go for that. I try to also do it every month, to take one day at least. I plan it off. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it's just an easy day, but putting that in your planning can help you through those weeks. And I love the story that the US soccer team won the World Cup a year, and they attributed winning that World Cup to matching the menstrual cycle and matching these reflecting and more low energy periods with the resting time for each individual person. And so it's really nice to see that in other fields this can also be applied. So please let me know, those that you are here, let me know in the chat what type of activities you feel like doing during this reflection menstrual phase period. I would love to know, please. Then I keep talking in the meantime. So what comes next? So next is my favorite phase. That is the creation phase. So when that is going off, maybe you are still bleeding, but you already have more energy, comes that creation phase when you might feel like starting new projects, finally starting to write that paper. You feel like, yes, I want to start. Or some days is like maybe the brainstorming and the planning, but in a more intense way. I feel more like writing. It's a phase where I want to write, either starting or just continuing. It's a moment when I feel, but it's a moment also for you to plan, and it's a moment also when ideas can come. New ideas is something we always want, so that can come in those days. And that phase will last more or less until the ovulation. So then when the ovulation phase comes, it's also super interesting, because that's an ideal moment for communication. And a bit opposite of what happens during the menstruation, it's a period for outward energy. Let me see. Okay, now if anyone wants to share what you feel like doing during the creation phase, please let us know. It would be great to know some examples. So what to do in the communication? Well, there we might be more like giving a talk, maybe giving a seminar in your department, or maybe having that monthly meeting with your collaborators where you discuss the results, the process of the project. That can be a good moment. They say it's a great moment to negotiate an increase of salary, although I think in our field doesn't happen that much. But it's also a moment for those difficult meetings where you want to show up strong and win something out of them. You might feel strong for that in those days. Let me see. Oh, yeah, this is also a very nice tip. Something easy in those first days, like creating figures or making them pretty. This is something that indeed we always speak that is one of those easy tasks that need to be done, that you might even enjoy, but that you don't need to be so focused. So this is great for those days. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So now we were at the ovulation, communication. Remember, outward energy, anything that you need to really show out there, out in the world, speak, share results, discuss. Maybe, for example, I say when you're writing a paper, if in the creation phase you have been writing the first ideas and really starting that paper, in the communication phase you might feel like, oh yeah, maybe now is a good moment to share this work, discuss it with my co-authors, or maybe with one, or maybe with a colleague in the coffee corner. That can work well. Yes. And then what do we do? I don't want to forget. Something that I also feel that is typical for me for this period around the ovulation is sending difficult emails. So this is something that we often speak with the students of the courses, that we all have all those tasks that they require extra courage from us. And something we do sometimes is the courage week, where we really try to do a lot of those courage tasks in a week. So you could have a list of those courage tasks that you find a bit difficult, that you have been procrastinating about. And often those are difficult emails. So sometimes it's like asking for money and asking for time. That is always difficult. Like sometimes asking for holidays or asking for help. I sent today an email about that. And often we find it a bit... we find it difficult. We just procrastinate. We might have been postponing for days or weeks to do it. So you might feel that around these days you have more energy to do that. So if you feel it, if you say, oh, actually today I'm going to send that email, then send them all those difficult emails, all those courage tasks that you have been delaying. Use that energy that you have around the ovulation or in any other moment if you feel you have that energy and do the difficult things. You won't regret. Now, again, let me know if there are more things that you would like to share, that you like to do, that you feel more prone to do during that ovulation phase. And then we continue with the last phase, which is, I said, it's a very interesting phase because I see quite different energy between the first half when the hormones are still climbing up and going to the peak, and the second half when the hormones start declining. So in the first half, is the completion phase. So you might still be very productive, and also your brain might be more triggered towards paying attention to detail and do the little final touches. For example, you may feel like editing. If in the creation phase you were writing a lot of ideas and practicing this free writing, I always recommend you. Now you might feel more like editing and seeing that there is not too much repetition and that the paragraphs have a nice structure, and all these little details. Or you might feel also like I'm going to be doing now my statistical analysis and that type of deep focus, detailed type of work. It's very good on this first phase. Now, the second phase before the period is we might be starting again into that reflection phase that we started with, that when you already are more inwards and you don't want to socialize and be alone with your papers, reading papers or doing easy work like doing those figures. And with that, we kind of close the whole cycle. Now, let me know in the comments if you have any question, and then we can chat more about it. But just to highlight again, like we have this natural energy to do certain tasks, and often we ignore it. We ignore the energy that the task requires, and sometimes we ignore the energy that we have for that specific task. And while for other type of tasks, we might be full of energy. So either following the menstrual cycle or any other pattern or no pattern, or just checking in the morning, first thing in the morning, like, okay, how do I feel today? What type of tasks I feel more inclined to do? And that is not so much about planning, but also having enough flexibility in your planning that you can then adapt and change one task for another one. Now, something still to pay attention, to be careful, is that you are not using this as an excuse to procrastinate and check that you are not moving tasks over and over, and in the end you complete a full cycle and you never had energy for that. That is a clear sign that there is something else, and that's why you don't want to do it. So that definitely pay attention that that's not happening. And yes, just having that flexibility, but also that awareness of the energy that you have for things and that things require. Let me see. Yes, so actually in my blog post, so if you go to afocusandwrite.com, in the blog, there is an article about planning with your menstrual cycle, and there you have some diagrams that these things that I've explained you can see more visual, but also you can download a template with more ideas about tasks and also space for you to start tracking and the things that you might feel like doing in those certain moments. Yes, so no, definitely start paying attention to how your productivity in general or for certain type of work might change during these days. And I also say, like, it's not the only cycle. We have, like, every day we also have a daily cycle, which is also triggered by hormones and the circadian rhythm. And if you think about it, you might feel it also during your day. Like, okay, the void, the reflection phase, that might happen in the night when you're sleeping, but you might feel like when you go to bed you're extra reflective, or when you wake up in the morning. I love to stay there in bed thinking with my thoughts. And then, very normal from all the people we speak, 80% of the people are morning people, that when you wake up is when you have most energy and you are more focused, your writing goes better. Around lunchtime is a great time for socializing, talk to people, be outdoors, discuss things. And then in the afternoon, we often have this down moment, but also towards the here is a little bit different, right? So towards the end of the day, often we also have a little peak on productivity because the day is finishing and you really want to finish some things. Now, if you think about your daily cycle and the daily productivity, if you follow this pattern, which you might not, other people feel it differently throughout the day. There are other factors, right, that is also there mix up, like, for example, what you eat at lunch. If you have a very heavy lunch, it's normal if your productivity after that is a little bit low, but still paying attention. This is the most important thing, that you pay attention to the cycles, to the energy, and try to adapt your planning, incorporating that energy. And also, if you want to learn more, I have a free class on this concept of more mindful productivity, where I give some tips to manage your time, your projects, and your energy. So you can go to ifocusandwrite.com, and there it's the invitation to join the free class on productivity is very, very easy to find. And yeah, let me know if you have some more questions. We have a few more minutes, but I would like to know how it goes if you start implementing this, and how you feel about your energy, about your mood. Because also something very important, something that often people that send me then an email or students share, is that the best of knowing this and understanding it is also to be more compassionate with yourself. So those days when you cannot write, when you cannot focus, you might find an explanation that it has nothing to do with you not being a good writer, or not being good enough to be a science, or any of these things that often in these phases we might tell to ourselves. And it's not the case. It's just your mind, your body, how life works, and just understanding it can help to practice that compassion.